So let's move on to the next subject, and that is, of course, The Last of Us Part 1 remake, which is not. This is where it gets confusing. If anybody is not familiar with the Last of Us series, this is now the third release, packaged release of the game. It originally came out on the PlayStation 3 at the very end of the generation, same year as GTA 5, and we all know how GTA 5 has never been re-released on subsequent platforms or anything like that at all. It stayed in that generation and never transcended. But anyway, here we are. The Last of Us is in 2013, so it's almost a decade. And so this comes out just this year, actually last week. And I have been playing it non-stop. I just finished it yesterday because I'm a huge fan of The Last of Us. I love the writing in it. I love the performances of it. I loved the gameplay, and I know that's a touchy subject for certain gamers out there. They thought it was really kind of clunky and they didn't love it, but I loved it because it was different enough where I felt like I'm struggling to survive here. I'm struggling to shoot. Whereas a lot of people are like, why is the shooting so shit? And all this kind of stuff. So I adored it. So anyway, roll forward into 2014, like literally a year later, the launch of the PlayStation 4, and they remastered the PlayStation 3 version and called it The Last of Us Remastered. And it came with it, obviously, higher resolution, higher textures, but it was essentially the same game, the same port, essentially, right? Nothing really had been done dramatically to it. Then, actually, no, I'm actually going to go and add another one, because when the PlayStation 4 Pro launched, and I think that was around, 16, 17 or thereabouts, I'm trying to remember when that hardware launched now, they released a patch that gave it a not quite 4K resolution and some performance kind of jumps and things like that as well. So still quite fresh in the memory for a lot of people, because it's only like within the last 5 years it got this kind of souped up version that you could play on a PlayStation 4 Pro, and it was like the definitive way to play this kind of classic. And obviously they wanted to generate that hype again for 2020 when part 2 came out. So a lot of people replayed it in like 2020 to play through part 1 straight into part 2. I didn't actually do that because I knew the game so well. I went straight into part 2. I couldn't hold off. So here we are in 2022, and they're dubbing it as a built from the ground up PlayStation 5 game where everything has been rebuilt. Excuse me. All new character models, all new textures, all new lighting, all new AI systems, gameplay refinements. And I have to say, I have been kind of blown away by just how good the presentation is. It is phenomenally looking. Obviously, I think it's native like 1440p, 60 frames per second with the performance mode. And there's a 4K 30 resolution mode. I played it in performance mode because it's so slick and smooth. But even that 1440 looks amazing on a 4K TV if you're fortunate enough to have one. But the major caveat here is that it is a full-priced PlayStation 5 game of £70. Now, if you could do some hunting around, I managed to pick it up for 60, which wasn't too bad. But that price is what has really been driving a lot of vitriol or of kind of annoyance on the internet, and we know that internet is never a place for vitriol or anything like that, or people getting upset. But this has caused a new wave, and it's really unfortunate because a lot of people are saying this is not a remake, this is just a glorified remaster because of X reasons, because the fundamental gameplay mechanics haven't changed. I think a lot of people were wanting the actual systems from part 2, like Ellie, where you play in part 2, she can dodge, she can go prone, she can roll under cars, all this kind of amazing extra gameplay improvements that they made to make part 2 friggin' phenomenal. And I've been replaying that as well, and it is, but they wanted that to be transposed into part 1. Like there was this kind of expectation that the moveset of Ellie would be applied to Joel. And obviously that isn't the case, because And I think this is where it got a little bit a little bit murky with the messaging, because Naughty Dog said that there's going to be improvements to the gameplay, so everybody made that assumption of, oh, they're going to be adding part two's gameplay tweaks and mechanics into part one, and that's obviously not the case. Joel still moves like Joel did in the 2013 PlayStation 3 game, but they have tightened things up. They've made it just feel a lot slicker. Animation blending between hits and movement and running away and that kind of stuff. It definitely feels a lot tighter, but it obviously does not have the move sets or gameplay tweaks or improvements from part two. So there was this kind of misunderstanding of that right there, and then marry that problem with the cost of this thing. Like, it's not a PlayStation 5 game. It's not a brand new PlayStation 5 game, but they're trying to push that narrative that it is a PlayStation 5 game. It's built from the ground up. And whilst that is kind of true, it still plays like a PlayStation 3 game. Ultimately, it still plays like a PlayStation 3 game. Bit slicker, bit tighter. They have improved the AI actually quite dramatically. I was shocked at how good the AI is now. Like, it really does feel like you're being hunted now. Whereas it kind of did a little bit. It was kind of like that, the disguise of being hunted in the PlayStation 3 game and the remaster for PlayStation 4. But now it does actually feel like you're being hunted. They will flank you. They will coordinate. They will try and get around your location. And like, your heart is kind of pacing and like beating when they're trying to hunt for you. So I loved it. But if it was a £50 game rather than a £70 game, I don't think anybody would be saying anything at that price point. It's just that they came in at 70, and they're pushing this narrative that it is a brand new PlayStation 5 game. But ultimately, the mechanics are that generation, 2 generations ago now. The mechanics are still that generation, the end of that generation. So I want to get your thoughts on it. I've rambled quite a bit there, giving a bit of my thoughts on it. So we'll take the price out of the equation just now, and then we'll get your thoughts on the price aspect. But first of all, give me your thoughts on the actual work that's gone into it. What do you think about this as a package? Because just to make the naming convention even more confusing, we have The Last of Us on PlayStation 3. We have The Last of Us Remastered, which is the old game on PS4, which plays brilliantly on PlayStation 5. And now we have The Last of Us Part 1. And that's just the name of it. That's the remake, not the remaster. It's just called Part 1 now. So, guys, over to you. Jamie, you kick off first for me.
So, aside from the naming convention, which gave me strong trying to explain why the first Star Wars movie is Part 4 to my kids' vibes,
Yes.
It looks amazing. Obviously, you've been sharing a lot of stuff from it, and it looks glorious. Now, I've not played any of the Last of Us games because they're PlayStation, and as we all know, I can't afford every gaming platform much as I would like to. So I tend to sort of let PlayStation stuff slide me by. But Last of Us has got so much love, and all the talk of the TV show, and I've got friends who play. Obviously, you've played it a lot, Ross, and other buddies of mine who played it. It looks gorgeous, like just visually. But yeah, I'm hearing a lot of people saying exactly what you've said, like on Twitter and that. I've seen a lot of it where it still feels like a much prettier version of what they played before. A little bit smoother maybe, but it's still the same game, which it was always going to be, because even if they completely remade it from the ground up, changed everything about it, it's still going to be the same game with the same story and the same content. I think they would have had less resistance if they had added the new gameplay mechanics, or even a little bit extra content to the game. I know some, it's not the first time a game's been completely remastered and had a little extra story dropped in, or a little extra. Do you know, weirdly, it's a weird comparison, but I don't know if you've read The Stand by Stephen King. The original version of The Stand by Stephen King is 700 odd pages long. Fantastic story, like one of my favorite books. Years later, once he actually had a few years under his belt and the money and the sort of selling power to go, why not? He re-released The Stand, the complete and unabridged version. It was the story he really wanted to tell in the first place, and it's got an extra, I think it's like 500 pages in the book.
Wow.
and it tells whole chapters that were never told, and they weren't even cut from the original. It was that he had them in his head, but never quite added them in because he thought it was too lengthy. And it's a fantastic story, and it does feel like you're reading. It's the same familiar tale, but it feels like you're reading something new, and it changes your perspective on certain things slightly. So I didn't mind going out and buying another book again to, and a full priced release book. So yeah, it's looking really good, but I don't know. It looks really pretty, but there doesn't seem to be anything beyond that. That's, again, without diving into the pricing just yet. It's because I'm really nervous about doing that.
Sarah.
I mean, I haven't played the remake, but I absolutely love this franchise. Like, it's a great set of games, such incredible storytelling, and the idea that the clickers now have essentially the AI of the part 2 game, which was already, they were so creepy. Having a pair of headphones on and playing that game. No. You play that with the sound out loud in the room. Don't have it coming straight into your ears. That is terrifying.
Brightness turned up to the max as well.
Yeah. All the windows open. But yeah, it's an incredible game, and it's amazing to see how beautiful it has been made. And I think that's a really nice thing for fans to see. I do think that, yeah, like you were saying, Jamie, it would have been nice. It would be nice to have a bit more content to kind of justify having redone it essentially a third or fourth time at this point. I think the problem with adding the mechanics of part 2 might mean that maybe they would need to redesign some of the encounters or level stuff as well, because it would have an impact on the things that you could avoid or the things that you could move around and under. So it would probably just make the remake a bigger project. But maybe if they'd thought about that and maybe given it a bit of extra time, maybe that would have been a good solution, actually. And like you say, without going into the pricing side of things, it may have justified getting people to buy an entire new game. I like the idea of building on the world as well, like with extra content, like similar to what you were saying about that
yeah,
book.
I mean, whilst it does come with the Left Behind kind of prequel DLC surrounding Ellie, the remaster also came with that on the PlayStation 4.
Yeah, which I've played.
Yeah, which is great. But the PlayStation 4 also came with the Factions multiplayer mode, which is a fantastic multiplayer mode, whereas that has been ripped out of this. They haven't done the multiplayer aspect for this remake. So again, consumers are thinking, well, we're actually getting less product in terms of actual checklist items here in this package for a full-priced game. And this next iteration of Factions has been talked about for a few years now about what Naughty Dog are. They are working on a multiplayer game. Is it Factions 2.0? What is it? And the fact that isn't either ready yet, or maybe it's been scrapped, or maybe it's turned into something else. Maybe Factions no longer exist, and they're not going to be going down that avenue for The Last of Us multiplayer anymore. We obviously don't know. But had this launched next year, and maybe Factions was ready to go, or a platform that they could build on the multiplayer aspect, but it's like a core kind of skeleton framework for Factions, it's ready to go and put that out as a package as well with it, then I don't think anybody would again be complaining about £70, because you're getting this multiplayer aspect of this world, Fireflies against the Fedra kind of factions, or maybe the third class as well from part 2 comes in as well, the Scars, maybe that gets added to it. And all of a sudden you've got this really enticing new multiplayer offering with a new lick of paint, new physics work, new models and everything like that, new lighting work for part 1, and then that is your package. And I understand the kind of the business reasonings of getting it out to generate hype for the HBO show. We know that's coming next year. But again, that's coming next year. Why not put the game out next year when the show's about to land? Like, the show's like a week away or 2 weeks away, and then the game drops just before it to generate hype for it then, rather than a year in advance or something like that. So it's unfortunate that this is the kind of conversations that are now stealing the thunder of this amazing masterpiece of a game, rather than it being celebrated to say, oh my God, look at how amazing this thing looks and now plays on the PlayStation 5. And it's Sony are unfortunately not doing themselves any favors in the headlines the past little while, and it's because of unfortunate decisions like that. Because, man, like just seeing the extra physics work that's been added to this game, stuff that you wouldn't necessarily notice, but you feel, and it's that kind of thing that's hard to kind of market because it's all about feeling. Like in the first game, you couldn't really like, this is going to sound horrible, but you couldn't shoot the legs of the enemies and have them crawl toward you, kind of thing, like Resident Evil style. But you can do that, and you can do that in Remake now. Do you know what I mean? So you can be a bit more targeted with your shots. You can shoot them in the arm and things like that, and they'll recoil, and like that's stuff that they had in Part 2, and that's been put over to Part 1. And that's the kind of stuff which I think they're referring to when they say we've improved the gameplay. Not the ability to quickly dodge or to lie and go prone, which is what everybody's kind of fixating on. And Sarah, you're absolutely right. In order to add that kind of stuff into the game, they would have had to massively rework a lot of the environments, a lot of the encounter design, and that is a project that's maybe just a bit too big to kind of get this delivered. And then it no longer feels like the Part 1 that you remember. And that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to really capitalize on nostalgia for Part 1. Then, like, we played it way back on the PlayStation 3, and I probably picked up the remaster and played that to death as well. And again, it's that double-edged sword of do you do a Resident Evil 2 remake where everything is drastically different in terms of the camera work and the movement? And that is very much like, for me, that's the GOAT of remakes right now. Or do you do this is maybe one for Jamie as well, do you do like a Halo Combat Evolved Anniversary where they haven't touched the gameplay at all, but they've given it well, for the Xbox 360 era, modern graphics and modern kind of lighting, stuff like that, because they don't want to mess with the feel of that celebrated FPS shooter that defined Xbox, you know? And so it's a tricky situation. It's a difficult one to balance as from a business aspect, from a creative aspect. But I think it comes down to the price. And now this is where we'll get you both of your opinions on the price. For me, had it been $20 or £20 less expensive, we probably wouldn't be having this conversation. You know, the audience would probably be like, okay, it's $50, £50. I can see the value here because it looks so amazing, and then I'll go out and buy it. Sarah.
I'm inclined to agree with you. That the £70 price point seems like a lot, considering what you get versus what you don't get. I don't know if it's even possible to do this, but if it was possible to reward people who had already had copies of the game, give them a discount and say, oh, you can essentially upgrade your version to the remake, that would be great. And if it was like, then it was like £50, £40, something like that. It just feels like 70 is a lot for nostalgia. Especially because actually we played Last of Us quite recently. So for me, I think we played it. We replayed it when the second one dropped. So we replayed through the whole thing. So it feels still quite new for me. And that makes me reluctant to be spending 70 quid. It makes sense if it really genuinely was a new game, if it had additional content, if it had... I think more for me, it's about additional content, because I love the idea of it being the same story, cleaned up and made to look pretty. But it would just be nice to have a little something else.
Yeah, even if it was a package with, like, they bundled it with Part 2, but Part 2 was a proper PS5 upgrade as well. You know, something like that would have gone really far to quell all of this anger.
Yeah. I also think that I literally had a my thought fell out of my brain. I was going to say something and I've forgotten. Talk about you guys. Talk
It'll
about
come back. It'll come back. Jamie, what do you think?
Okay, I'm choosing my words very carefully because I have previous when it comes to this sort of discussion, and I'm not getting another community of fans angry with me at this stage. I have a problem with it. I really do. But the problem I have is partly with the price point they've set and partly with people going out and paying it. You look at Combat Evolved Anniversary. the nostalgia was real. Halo, one of my favorite games of all time. I got to go back and play it again, but I didn't have to pay full price for it.
Sure.
I didn't have to pay out like it was a new game, so that was worth it to me. It's like, no, this is great. I'm going to be able to sit down and play it again, and because I would do that now and again anyway, just replay Halo. So, but this time it's going to be much better looking, and then of course Master Chief Collection came along, and we got that again in spades, and it was great. The problem with something like this is they set that price point because they know they can, because they know that people will ride that nostalgia wave and go, oh, well, I'm going to buy it. It's my favorite game series. My favorite. I'm going out and buying it. Every time we do that as a community, we're voting with our wallets and saying it's okay to keep taking money off of us. We don't mind because we will do anything for nostalgia or we'll do anything for hype. And it's at some point, the only way you fix it is if we all stand up and say, I'm not doing it anymore. You release it for 50, I'll pay it. You release it for 70, you're not getting any sales. And no one will ever do that because it's personal choice and people can spend their money how the hell they want, which is totally fine. So it's kind of a double. Like, I don't like it. I think they need to start. I think the onus needs to be on the gaming industry to say, okay, look, we could rinse you, but we're not going to because it's not entirely justified. And then they'll garner an awful lot more love in the court of public opinion, and then that can only pay dividends for them in the future when they release their next big game or they have a delay on the game that's coming up. But if they do things to make us love them, then we're more likely to give them a bit of leeway in the future. So it's a bit, but I don't think it's worth it to me. If it were me buying, and obviously I'm having to compare it on the basis of a game I've not played, but to me personally, it wouldn't be worth it to go out and do it because there's not enough that's new about it for me to spend that money. I would sooner wait until further down the line when it's a wee bit cheaper and then pick it up at a sale or something and try it because it does look amazing. That's the thing. There's nothing wrong with the game. It looks great, and I'm sure it's a great experience to play. But I don't think it's full price worthy. I don't think it's entirely fair to the fans to do it.
So. Here's my question for you. So you never played, obviously you don't have a history with The Last of Us as a series, so you're not a super fan that they're really capitalizing to go out and want to get this.
No.
The exact opposite of what I am, unfortunately, whereas I was like, I really should vote with my wallet, but fuck it, I really want the game, so here we are. So if you had a PlayStation 5 with no history with The Last of Us, this game comes out, as far as you're concerned, it looks like a brand new game for your PlayStation 5. Even then, you're still not tempted to say, I'm happy to pay this full price game for this PlayStation 5 specific game. It's new to you, so therefore it's like a new game. It's like a modern game. That's still not enough, you would think.
I still think I would wait for a sale because I would know that it wasn't something brand new. It was something that was brand new to a lot of people, 9 years ago. And although this experience is going to be a much more polished one and look really nice, it would still rankle with me to feel like I was paying full modern era price for something that wasn't entirely modern era.
Yeah, I suppose that's the thing because it still feels like it plays like a PlayStation 3 game. Only it looks so much slicker and it looks so much smoother, and the animations are far beyond what was ever possible on a PlayStation 3. But compare it to the improvements in gameplay which we kind of expect for modern games to have. It obviously doesn't have that, so you will be thinking, well, sure is pretty, but it feels like I'm playing a game from 2 or 3 generations ago. And then, there's not a problem with that. I mean, one of my favorite games of last year was Kena Bridge of Spirits, which looked like a DreamWorks movie or Pixar movie. Those little black what are they called? They're rot creatures. They're so adorable. They have to be plushies. Again, that game feels like you're playing like a Jack and Daxter or a Crash Bandicoot, like mechanically and things like that. It looks doesn't look, but it feels like it's playing a PlayStation 2 era game, and they kind of embrace that. But it looks gorgeous. It looks modern. But the gameplay, like there's no ledge grabbing when you're jumping to platforms, things like that, things that you would expect. It's like you have to make sure your feet are above the platform, otherwise you're not gonna make the jump. But that launched and it wasn't a full price game. I think it was about £40 or something like that. So it wasn't. I don't think. Maybe I'm wrong here, but I'm pretty sure it wasn't the full £70 for that game, because it was a small, unproven indie team. It looked phenomenal. It had the backing, obviously, of PlayStation to promote it, but they weren't charging £70 for it, even though it looked. That is a brand new IP, brand new game for your PlayStation. So it's an interesting discussion to say what constitutes like a modern feeling game, whereas a lot of gamers are happy to have something that looks phenomenal, myself included, but still kind of has that feel of like the PlayStation 3, Xbox 360 era. I mean, Outriders is a fine example. That feels and almost plays identically to like Gears of War on Xbox 360. Unashamedly, like that's what they're latching onto, that kind of old school style of gameplay, but it looks modern. There's way more kind of flashy graphics and superpowers and things like that. But that's built upon, we just want to make an old school game, but it looks phenomenal.
Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe the issue lies in the fact that they're trying to bill it as a brand new game where they shouldn't be. Like maybe if they didn't take that perspective. Also that thing you were saying about people coming at it as new players, that was what I was trying to say before when it dropped out of my brain. And maybe it would make sense to be releasing this closer to the time of the TV show, so that if somebody encountered the TV show and then went, oh wait, there's a video game on this, and then they come in and they play part 1, which already looks pretty, which already is nice, and then they play part 2, and I think it would have worked much nicer that way around.
I think so as well, because you're going to be getting that whole audience who have their first encounter with, what is this new HBO show? Have you heard of The Last of Us before? It's like, dude, yeah. Have you played the game it's based on? Well, go check it out. It's just came out on PlayStation 5. It looks amazing. This is the Joel that I grew up with. Go check it out, because Pedro Pascal is your Joel, but Troy Baker's my Joel. Let's go. Yeah. Let's talk about the differences and have that kind of conversation. So it's a strange one for sure. I think they messed up the timing of when they chose to release it. I think they messed up a lot of the messaging, and they just came in way too high a price, which is unfortunate. And it is unfortunate, but same thing. It's the kind of thing where I don't regret buying it, but at the same time, I think I feel dirty buying it as well because it's so expensive.
That's
and
the thing.
I knew I shouldn't have, but
Stop
I did.
enabling this.
Yeah,
I know exactly.
Yeah, think of the accessibility for like gamers. Like, surely we want to have a community where everybody can play, regardless of what their income is, And this kind of 70 quid for a brand new game is really tough, and it also sucks having to wait for a sale because I want to play this game now, but I can't because I can't financially, justify it. Yeah, that sucks.
Oh, the FOMO amongst gamers at this point, constantly, and it's. But I think that's the thing. It's like you said, you don't regret buying it. You feel that that's it all over, because that's what I'm saying with the voting with our wallets thing. I'm not actually. I've never actually expected or called for the gaming community to rise up and be like, we won't pay. Because no one's going to do it. Because I get it. Because I've paid over the odds for games too soon that I probably should have waited for, because I've had so much hype for them. I'm like, I have to play this. This is something I've waited for. So I've never questioned any one person's personal choice in buying a game and enjoying it. But as long as we all keep doing it, we're all going to have to keep putting up with this happening. There's no easy way out of it, unfortunately. That's what the only way it could potentially change would be for a little bit more responsibility from some of the game companies to actually step up and go, do you know what, we'll cut you a break and we won't charge you quite as much for this one. But ultimately, is any business not going to apply a price to the product that is the most money they can get out of you for that thing? Because it's business, yay capitalism, but that's what we signed up for. So